Perfect, Aidan, actually, and it's fortuitous actually that you kind of got stuck halfway through in the first and it came back around again, because it certainly rounded off the presentations in a really good way. It followed nicely on from Anatolia's, because Anatolia's gave us a real life experience of Africa, and then you came back in with your roses from Africa and a great suggestion around the electric picnic, which please God we'll all get free tickets to go to next year.
Join the ambassadors.
Great. There's the first thought. Join the ambassadors. So more action. Okay, Aidan, thank you so much indeed, and Ciara and Anatolia as well. So at this stage of the evening, really, just to let you know that part of the work of the Africa Europe Faith and Justice Network Ireland Group for the last little while has been around the Corporate Sustainability and Due Diligence Directive, which is really kind of around legislation that's coming on stream in Europe to try and make sure that all along supply chains there's a certain amount of fairness. And we've had some wins in that respect, but there is a little bit of news, not much. So I'm going to ask if Jim Owens from the Africa Europe Faith and Justice Network might just bring us up to speed for a couple of minutes on exactly where we are with that campaign at the minute, just to kind of refresh it in our minds and tell us exactly where we are. Jim, if you're there, would you mind unmuting and bringing us just up to speed for a moment or two? Thank you. You're still on mute, Jim.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Perfect, Jim, go ahead.
That's great, and thanks, Brian, for your little summary there, which is excellent. And I think we've heard the word system and systematic change mentioned a few times in those excellent presentations, both from Ciara and Sister Antonio. And really that's what this Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive is trying to do. Now it has a long process and it's slow moving. As we know, voluntary codes of practice don't really work. They're good, they're accepted, but they don't really work, and people, particularly people, get exploited. And we've heard mentions of it tonight already about the whole closed trade, the conditions that people work in, the lack of rights they have, and that they have no comeback, or very little comeback. So the EU Commission have been after much lobbying and pressure, have brought in this directive, and it had to go through, is going through really effectively through the three sections of EU legislation. So, and as we have said, the new rules will ensure that businesses will address adverse impacts in their actions, including their supply chains from outside Europe. So that's very important for all their supply chains, all the companies that they have to deal with. Now, getting the directive through is a slow, tedious process. And it went through the Commission and then onto the Parliament. And many of you here tonight joining this webinar will have been aware of it going through the EU Parliament and possibly lobbied MEPs and our own TDs in the process. So changes, amendments, watered, I suppose, really in some ways has been watered down a bit. So effectively, this directive is limited in scope. That's the unfortunate thing about it. It looks like at the moment it could be only companies, corporations with more than 1,000 employees and with a turnover of 300 million euro. It will also apply to companies, non-EU companies, who have 300 million turnover in the EU. So we can see a lot of companies are exempt from it at the moment. Now, the latest word is that the amendments and changes have gone to the trilogue, and it's hoping that the trilogue meeting, this is basically the three legs meeting, coming to a consensus, will finish up later this month, and then it will go for ratification and it will be signed off by the Council. Now, then it goes back to each national parliament of the 27 countries, and they have to ratify it. So it looks like it could be 3 years before this has a force of law behind it. But it is putting pressure on companies. And if you look at some of the advising agencies for companies, they're telling them that it's coming down the line and you have to prepare for it. So that's a good sign. The weakness is that so many companies, the smaller companies, are exempt at the moment. So good lot of work has been done, but more needs to be done. Another aspect that's a little bit weak in the directive is the protection. It is very weak, I think. The protection of people who demand human rights and labour rights. Their protection is not really that well protected. So there's a feeling that we have a lot done, but an awful lot more to do. And Sister Antonia, said it. We have the privilege and opportunity to advocate very strongly with TD, with our MEPs, with Europe, and it's good to see that it is having some effect. So we have a responsibility, but I think we have a responsibility to keep at it, because in a way we are the voice of people that cannot advocate for themselves, that we heard about tonight. So thank you very much. As I say, a lot done, but more to do.
That's great, Jim, and thank you very much indeed. And you're right, we've had a small win, but it's going to take a while to have the discussions translated into laws that we can understand, and we have a feeling it might be watered down on the way. But when it comes back to the National Parliament, our plan is to come back to all of you to help try and press home what we've heard really about small companies not being included, about human rights defenders not being looked after properly, and all of the things that people are trying to water down. But that's only part of the issue.